Good afternoon. I'm David Draper with Lewis Thomas and Law Firm. Today is Monday, September 26, 2022. I'm very pleased and proud to be here this afternoon with David Black at his beautiful home here in Blount County known as Hollybrook Farm. He is a lifelong resident of Blount County, and I'm very pleased to be able to speak with him today about some of his reflections on his very long and rich law practice as a part of this KBA Living History program.
David, thank you for doing this. Appreciate you coming out.
Well, David, what does T stand for, your middle initial?
Thomas.
I met you in 1992, I believe. As you will recall, we discussed before we got started here in a case with my former colleague, Mr. Andy Gallion. And I must say it's a privilege to be here today at this beautiful property to be able to conduct this interview with you for the KBA. I want to begin by just asking you to give a brief summary of your background before you ended up at law school and your upbringing.
Sure. I was born in Fontana, North Carolina. My father worked on the dam up there during the war. We moved, after a short period of time, we moved back to Greenback, to my grandmother's farm, and then moved to Maryville when I was 5. And I've lived in Maryville ever since, except for sojourns with a job opportunity I couldn't turn down in the Army.
Your father was a machinist and your mother was a school teacher.
That's correct.
And you, in time, joined the U.S. military, as I understand it.
I did. Army.
Tell me, what was happening at that time? Was that in the midst of the Vietnam War?
It was.
And you ended up in what branch of the military?
The Army Security Agency.
Can you tell me briefly about that experience?
I can. I can tell you what's not classified.
Okay.
Since that's in the news so much today. Basically, I was in the S3 of the battalion headquarters. Enjoyed the military, wouldn't take anything for that experience. I was in 2 years. Basically went up and down the East Coast, Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, Fort Devens. And it was a security agency.
Okay. And in time, that experience came to an end and you entered the practice of law. First, you went to the University of Tennessee.
I did. Graduated in 1967.
And you were in a program where you were 3 years undergrad and then 3 years law school?
That's correct.
Okay.
Started law school when I was 20 years old.
I'll be darned. And then you, tell me about your entry into the practice of law.
Well, I applied for a direct commission into the Army. It required a significant security check background. So I had about 9 months, 8 or 9 months, before I actually had to report. And I had a couple of interesting cases during that period of time. Not significant cases, but fun cases. Got a little bit of experience, and then went into the service.
Was that in Blount County?
Blount and Knox, yeah.
Okay. Were you were in solo practice?
No, I was with Ben Kaiser.
Okay.
Ben was a pilot, or not a pilot. He was the rear gunner in a B-24.
Oh, wow.
And was shot down over Austria. Spent 17 months in Stalag 17.
Was it just the two of you in practice?
It was.
He had he had people practice with him before?
He practiced with Ed DeLozer's father.
Okay.
And for a while with Ed. And then Ed moved to another firm.
Now, I've heard you refer to your practice as a Maryville practice, which I think by that you mean a general practice. You take all comers, pretty much.
Pretty much. Maryville is a diverse economy. A lot of businesses, college, airport, just farming.
Tell me what Ben Kaiser was like to come in and to start practicing with somebody like Ben Kaiser.
Ben was short, 5'6". He said you had to be small to be a real gunner. Delightful person. Never had a crossword. Never had a joke every day. Had some kind of new joke he would tell each and every day. He said he weighed 95 pounds when he got out of Stalag 17 and swore he'd never be hungry again. And he kept his oath. So he was probably weighed 225 pounds.
So from that initial experience in private practice with Mr. Kaiser, what came next?
Well, when I returned from the Army, Ben had kindly saved my spot, and we practiced together for probably 25 years.
Okay.
He retired and subsequently passed away, I think, in 1982.
I did not realize until I read your notes that you had for a time served as an assistant district attorney
That's correct.
in what was then Loudoun, Roane, and Blount County.
That's correct.
And you commented to me before we got started here today that at the end of the term, cases had to get resolved, criminal cases.
They did, or they'd be bound over to the grand jury, and the defense bar didn't want that.
And as a consequence, you would have some busy days towards the end of the term?
Into the evening, often. The last day of the term was particularly busy.
Including staying at the courthouse late?
I think the longest we stayed was 2 a.m.
And that was trying cases?
Trying cases all day long. Yeah.
And this
or
is
preliminary hearings or whatever.
Okay.
But,
and this is at the same time you are trying civil cases in your private practice?
That's correct.
You have any idea how many cases you tried in your career?
I do not, no.
It would be
several.
It would be in the hundreds, wouldn't it, or more?
Well, if you count all the little cases, yes,
Okay.
probably.
Which is not something that happens much anymore.
No, it's not. Very few cases tried now.
Let me stop for a second and comment and ask as well. Your wife is an attorney.
She is.
And she was also a part of your law firm, Kaiser and Black.
She was. She taught at the university for 8 years, and I talked her into coming to practice.
And you commented that she did the appellate work in your private firm.
She did.
She cleaned up all your messes.
She did. Very well.
Of which there
Very
probably weren't many.
Yes. Yeah,
And both of your daughters are lawyers.
they are.
What led you to get into the law? Do you know? Can you remember?
Well, I think I mentioned I thought you'd have some
Right.
spare time in the law, but that's not true.
Okay.
I was interested in the law, sat in on a few cases in high school when I was in high school, and just always intended to practice law. And had in mind the 3-and-3 program from the beginning.
I think you would be remembered most for your plaintiff work, if I had to guess, and I think my guess would be correct. You are a very successful plaintiff lawyer. Was there something that led you in that direction in the path of your career?
Well, as you mentioned, in Maryville, you take whatever comes in. Mostly plaintiff work came to Maryville. I did do some insurance work, but I didn't care for that much.
Yeah.
I wanted to be my own creator.
I want to talk with you about a couple of cases that you've shared with me some stories about. There was a case that you had along the way where you took on some lenders in the state of Tennessee. Could you just describe that for us generally?
Sure.
I guess it would help if I introduced the litigation by the style of the case, Cumberland Capital Corporation versus one Hubert Patty, a lawyer of some renown in East Tennessee who we've all heard of, 1977. So that's still pretty early on in your career.
Pretty early on.
Tell us about that.
All right, I got involved in that with Maryville clients who would come in and have various problems. The Truth in Lending Act had passed in 1970, I think.
The Truth in Lending Act.
Truth in Lending Act, which required the lender to identify the cost of money, the APR, annual percentage rate. Kept seeing these, some were as high as 40%, some higher than that. They were purportedly doing business under the Industrial Loan and Thrift Act. That act was challenged by my clients as being unconstitutional. The Tennessee Constitution of 1870 said thou shalt not charge more than 10% per annum interest. And from there, we filed a companion lawsuit, and Mr. Patty apparently read that suit, and he had a loan with Cumberland Capital. Cumberland Capital had sued him, and I went to Mr. Patty. I guess it solicited that case. I told him I'd represent him for $300 because I didn't want him to mess up our other case, in all honesty. And so he agreed. And sure enough, as I expected, they ran his case up to the Supreme Court first. We tried it originally before Judge Cole, who ruled that the legislature under the Industrial Loan and Thrift Act could no more charge in excess of 10% than they could declare that water was not wet or repeal the law of gravity. Pretty firm opinion.
I read that in your notes. I thought it was great.
And his opinion was affirmed 5-0 by the Supreme Court, ultimately.
That was a challenging case, not only in terms of the substantive law, but also procedurally. It was a class action, wasn't it?
It was. It was filed as a class action, both a plaintiff's action and a defendant's action. I was young and naive and didn't know where I was involved in class actions, but we filed it as a class action. The judge was Judge Willard Kittrell out of Roane County. He sustained it as a defendant's class, and he sustained it as a plaintiff's class. So the defendant's class was comprised of 423 industrial loan thrift companies. Of course, you have to have commonality and so forth. We had, as we argued that class action status, we had one lawyer stand up and say he didn't charge the way all the others did. So we just said, well, that's a subclass, Judge. So we had a subclass of that one company and main class of the others. And it was an interesting case. Very interesting.
Was it intimidating to find yourself involved in a class action with 423 parties? And
No, it didn't seem to be at the time. Now, we did talk to a fellow in Miami that was a little concerning. We were asking him some questions about what his company was doing, and he said in a rather low bass voice, "I know who you boys are," but no problems.
I'll be darned.
It was sustained, and 10 days later, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court set it aside as class action. I think it was the first class action filed in Tennessee.
Among your notes that you shared with me were notes about a case styled Harris versus Ray Blanton, kind of a sad case.
Sad case.
Tell us about
Tragic
that.
case. Harris was a young man, 19 years of age, blonde-headed, slight build, 138 pounds. I pled him guilty to joyriding. He was guilty. He had been out with 3 friends, and his car broke down. One of the friends said he knew where a car was over in the old barn. So he went over and got this old Chevrolet, and they came to town and had a good time. 250 yards before they got back, they had a wreck. So he was joyriding. The judge, to my dismay, sentenced him. We pled guilty to the minimum sentence, a year in jail, felony. The judge incarcerated him, no probation, because he'd smoked marijuana when he was 14, which shouldn't have been in there in the first place. Yeah. So he was sent initially to Loudon, to the jail down there, and then was transferred to the state prison in Nashville. The state prison, at that time, had all the Brushy Mountain folks in there. Oh, good grief. Because they were refurbishing Brushy Mountain. He was put in a cell with a fellow from New Jersey. He was there about 30 days when he was killed for defending a homosexual attack from a big guy that broke into his cell. Yes. Once again, having read the Constitution, it said at that time, the state shall provide safe and comfortable prisons. At that time, you had to file in the Board of Claims, supposedly, but the Constitution also said that state claims may be brought against the state in such courts as the legislature may determine. So we went down to argue that. I filed this claim in the Board of Claims against the state. I filed negligence action against the state, and I filed a civil rights action, federal court in Nashville. Obviously, there was a motion to dismiss the case that you can't sue the state except before the Board of Claims. And we argued that case. And the judge listened very carefully, and older judge, kindly judge. He said to the other side, he said, this Board of Claims with the treasurer on it and the comptroller and all these state officials, so that didn't seem like much of a court. He indicated he'd issue a ruling in a couple of weeks. He died before he ruled. So now I'm over in federal court. The judge in federal court now is Tom Wiseman. Tom had been general counsel for all the small loan companies that we had sued and put out of business.
It's a small world.
Small world. I said, I'm not sure how this is going to go. So we went in there to Wiseman. The state had good counsel. And just a little bit of the facts. I went down to the prison. We talked earlier about the importance of going to the scene.
Yeah.
So I went down to the prison to inspect it. And up on the third floor, it was just like you see on TV, just bad. Prison was built in 1898. His cells were 8 by 10 or something like that, 8 by 12. And I came out on the floor and I looked down through the row of cells, and 70% at least of the cells had locks on them. They had the big bar at the end of the row, where you could pull the bar down and all the cells would open up.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, that's odd. So stopped at the first cell there that had that, and there was an old guy in there and a young kid. And I started talking to him, asking him questions. Attorney General was not happy about that, and he said, you can't talk to them. I said, yeah, I can. So I asked this kid, I said, where'd you get this hat that's welded on out here? We make those in the metal shop, he said. You welded on your cell door? Yes, sir. Or where'd you get this lock? Mama sent it to me. And the old guy's over there, he knows the inmate code. You don't tell guys in ties anything. He's smoking this little short cigarette. I said, I don't understand. I said, why do you have your own lock on here? The old guy spit that cigarette out, and he said, hell, place is full of crooks. They'll get in here and clean you out. So that was neither safe nor comfortable. Go before Wiseman. I can't have a case in state court and a civil rights case in federal court, was the argument. Wiseman said, of course you can. There are two different causes of action. Motion overruled. Blanton went out of office. Lamar came in, and the case settled.
Tell me about, we talked over lunch about a case you had in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And I want to confine my inquiry to the resolution of that case. Here you are in Maryville. You have brought a lawsuit in Ohio on behalf of a truck driver. and he was in I guess, kind of a chain reaction collision that involved a very large, I guess, a flatbed truck at the head of the line with a heavy load on it.
Yeah.
Tell the folks watching about how that case got resolved, beginning with, I think, the Thursday when you were summoned to Ohio prior to the Monday when the case was supposed to begin, the trial was supposed to begin.
Right. This case was before, of course, I had got qualified up there, pro hoc issue, but this case was tried before what was known up there as the rocket docket. The federal judge had the fastest docket in the country. If you're plaintiff, you'd love to be there. I felt like I'd gone to heaven. Ohio was a complete comparative fault state. You could be 90% at fault and still collect 10% of your damages. So, got called up there for an unknown reason to be up there on Friday morning before the case was to be tried on Monday.
The judge's secretary calls you
Right.
on a Thursday and says you need to be up here in the morning.
At 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So, I go up. All the lawyers up there are very pleasant. It sort of surprised me, quite frankly. All very pleasant. And I get up there, and I'm the first guy called in. And I go in to the judge, and the judge said, now he's got a picture of General Patton behind his desk, full picture of Patton and his pistols. He said, how much you want to settle this case? And I told him. He said, Tennessee lawyers don't know how to settle cases. Go wait in the hall. Well, shoot. So I went out in the hall, and I sat there, and the lawyers came and went all day, back and forth, back and forth. Called me back in at 4:30. He said, well, I got it, but it wasn't easy.
The judge got your case up.
And he was a mediator judge before there was mediation.
Oh, wow. I kind of want to turn away a little bit from the specifics of your case experiences and talk more broadly about the practice of law. When I first encountered you, I learned pretty quickly that you're very detail-oriented. You may act like you're not, but you are. And in your notes to me, you shared an observation that was strikingly similar to an observation my dad had shared with me about how within the practice of law, one of the great joys of it is that you get to learn something about everybody else's business. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yes, more than everybody else's business. You learn that, of course, but you learn a little bit of medical. You learn a little bit of engineering. You learn health law. You learn.
I shouldn't say you
patent
learn
law.
their business, but you learn of the business they're in.
The business they're in. Yeah, it's interesting all the time, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's the benefit of a trial practice. You know, you're not stuck just doing one thing.
Well, and you also commented about just the satisfaction of being able to solve problems for people.
That is a great satisfaction.
And
people are generally appreciative if they know you've worked on their case and paid attention to detail.
yeah, you were one of the first certified mediators in East Tennessee.
I was.
But I'm guessing you didn't prepare a case any differently simply because you were going to mediate it.
No. It's no difference. The mediator's kin to a judge, I guess, in many ways. You got to present facts. You might be a little more selective on what facts you present to the mediator, just in case mediation fails to work.
One of your colleagues in an article about you commented that, let me just find the comment that I highlighted. She said that she passed you one morning on I think it was a rainy, cold morning, and you were out along a highway somewhere having some people look at a road condition. where there had been an accident or something, and I think the road was getting ready to be torn up and reconstructed or something. But we visited and talked a little bit about the importance of getting involved in all the facts and details of your case. Is that something that just came sort of naturally to you, or were you taught to do that, or did somebody impress that upon you, the importance of getting into the nitty-gritty of the case?
I just guess that was part of the process. You gather the facts. That particular case was an interesting case because there had been 22 accidents there prior to the one I represented the plaintiff on. In that case, there was a puddle. I had to be out there in the rain. It was out on Alcoa Highway right before the bridge there coming into Knox County. The car had hydroplaned there and gone over and hit my client's car and knocked him under a Walmart truck. Pretty serious accident. That was the 23rd accident there over the past 2 months, past 2 years. And the contractor had created that problem. Obviously, the contractor was on notice of all these previous wrecks, one of which went off into the lake. So that became a fairly easy case. I did a set of sticks that showed the elevations at various levels over an area about as big as this room at most. And you could just see the difference in the heights. And the surveyor did that, and had I not gone to the scene, I ran a different case. The driver that hit my client didn't have any money or any assets. So plaintiffs looked for a ability to pay.
I want to talk with you about some of your endeavors that have nothing to do with the practice of law, because one of the things I've been most impressed with is the variety of things you've been involved in outside of the practice of law. You created, I'll use the word created, it wasn't just a writing process, but you created a work called Tanasi 1796. Tell us a little bit about that.
Tanasi 1796 is basically a docudrama that I prepared almost as a hobby that covers the time period from the founding of Fort Loudon in 1756 to the adoption of the Constitution for the state of Tennessee in 1796. My ancestor was on that constitutional committee and from Blount County and actually helped draft that first constitution. Tanasi is a Cherokee word that means the gathering of rivers. 1796 obviously is when Tennessee became a state.
Right.
And the name Tennessee is derived from Tanasi.
And we're sitting here at Hollybrook Farm, and it's an amazing place. I guess the original main structure, you've told me, may be as old as the late 1790s, certainly pre-1820.
Yes.
So you're surrounded by history, and you're a lover of history.
I do enjoy history. And I'm married to a historian.
Well, you've made history, too, in a number of
I don't know
different
if I
ways.
can say that.
You've also served in a wide variety of government or quasi-governmental positions. Chairman of the Blount County Planning Commission. You were the attorney for the city of Maryville, the attorney for the city of Rockford. Is there something about public service that attracts you in that way?
Well, I think you just do what you need to do. If you're asked to do something, I think as a lawyer, you have a duty to give back, to serve.
Let me ask you to ponder a hypothetical. If a young lawyer were coming into your office today and seeking guidance on a difficult case, one that involved both substantive legal questions and procedural questions. But this is a young lawyer with very little experience. They weren't looking for you to give them the answer, but they were looking for you to give them kind of a guiding hand. What would be your approach to that sort of situation?
Well, yeah, you would gather the facts. You would. I often would put those facts into a computer, into a timeline. I think that's important to know what happened, when.
The chronology of events.
Chronology of events, correct. Define your legal issues. Go to the scene if there is a scene. Photograph it. Document that. And depending on what type of case it is, frame your initial discovery. Your complaint is your first level of discovery, believe it or not.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the complaint sets out facts, and the defendant answers or denies, admits or denies. So you have some admissions there.
Right.
If the defendant's honest.
Yep.
And you can eliminate those, put those aside, and go after the things that are contested, and proceed from there.
Do you have a recollection of an expert witness that you dealt with in all of your years of practice that gave you fits, was hard to crack, but maybe ultimately wasn't right?
On my side or the other
Either
side?
side. Don't have to name anybody, but a remembrance of a tough expert witness. Because I've seen you grapple with experts, and you're pretty effective.
I would say yes. All experts know more than I know, usually. Now, I know some lawyers end up knowing more than the expert knows, or think they do. But, yeah, I've had some that have been tough. Had one sue me once upon a time.
An expert witness sued you.
Mm-hmm.
How'd that turn out?
It turns out all right.
It didn't get very
He
far.
said he dismissed it if I wouldn't even pay the attorney fees. I said, sure. There was a dispute over something in Georgia. He was, well, a turncoat.
Do you think maybe sometimes trial lawyers may be a little guilty of trying to rush off and rush out and find an expert when maybe they don't need one?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Turn the case over to somebody who speaks from the mountaintop, so to speak.
Right. Somebody that's a knowledgeable fact witness,
Yeah.
for example.
You had an interesting case up in the Tri-Cities area, Irwin area, involving some sewer sludge. Right. What got you involved in that case?
Truthfully, I don't know. The client came in one day and said their son had a problem. He was seriously ill. He had been spreading over the last several months sewer sludge from the city of Irwin sewer plant on a farm that he worked for. He was a young man that was slightly impaired. Mm-hmm. He drove a tractor and loved driving the tractor and spreading the sludge. No protection. He'd come home, he'd have this dusty sewer sludge, dried sewer sludge all over him. He developed growth in his groin, growth on his neck, problems with breathing, and it seemed likely that there was a causal relationship between the spreading of the sludge and his injury. At that time, there was some litigation pending across the country, a case in Boston, a case in Georgia, of the consequences of being exposed to sewage sludge. In fact, there was a Madison Avenue booklet that was published that was it was contrary to the interest of the waste industry that said toxic sludge is good for you. So I got interested in that and filed a lawsuit.
Throughout your career, you had a number of cases where you were kind of taking on Goliath a little bit. You were representing the little guy versus the big guy in a number of cases that you had over the years. Was there something that sort of drew you to that type of a case?
Oh, my name's David.
Well, there you go.
No, I I enjoyed the practice of law. I mean, we had a good firm, and they tolerated my fiddling around with things like that. It's sort of a semi-hobby in many ways, of trying to learn about something. And
Well, you
some
had
kind
good
of
success
result.
with it.
Sometimes.
Of all of the things you've done outside of the practice of law, is there one in particular you're most proud of?
Yeah, I think the Tanasi 1796. I'm satisfied with that. It's a docudrama. We presented it at the Clayton Center. We've presented over there 3 different times. It's worked well. We had incredible participation. The proceeds all go to the Heritage Center in Townsend. We have in the lobby, we have 12 to 14 museums, the Blunt Museum, the Knoxville Museums, etc. And they all show up. And it's just a good event.
I want to ask you, we're getting close to the end of our time here, about Letters to Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Well, our youngest daughter, whom we thought would not have any children, at age 42, had a child named Peter. And Peter's now 2 years old, and he's delightful. And there's things I want him to know that I might not be around to tell him. So that's what the Letters to Peter are. And I've got several volumes down. Stuff he would probably never even look at. But
Well, I doubt that. I believe he very much will look at it. Here was the quote that your colleague, Miss Melanie Davis, offered in commentary of you. His presence is calming in turbulent situations. He makes you feel like everything is going to be okay. Throughout Kaiser and Black relocated its office off of your longtime campus at Cates,
all right.
and you're now on Main Street, and the firm lives on, now in the hands of other younger lawyers.
Younger, smarter lawyers, yes.
Well, how does it make you feel to know that you were part of creating a law practice that really is a premier firm in East Tennessee?
Oh, gosh, you're very kind. I hadn't really thought of that. What can I say?
Well, you've got good people over there, real
We
solid
do
lawyers.
have. And they're good people.
Did you enjoy mentoring young lawyers?
I did. But we tried to hire lawyers that could almost mentor themselves. But obviously there was supervision.
What sort of I mean, we all know you want to have somebody that's got a brain in their skull, but what sort of traits do you look for in a young trial lawyer?
Well, you don't have many trial lawyers anymore.
Well, that's true.
More transactional lawyers, I guess, at this point. But somebody that's personable, somebody that's articulate, somebody that works, that's dedicated, and somebody that's smart.
Being personal.
Not just grade smart, just street smart.
Common sense.
Common sense smart. Right.
How many years did you practice?
54.
You glad to be retired?
Yes, I miss it somewhat, but yeah, I am.
And you're still staying busy.
Still staying busy, yes, sir.
We have now consumed our time here this afternoon. I greatly appreciate it. You've achieved many great things in your career, and you've been a good influence on a lot of people. And I look forward to being able to visit with you some more.
Good. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed visiting with you.
Bye.